Hey everybody, welcome to Buzzing About Romance. I am Leah, and on this episode, I'm giving you a quick shot of romance author spotlight edition. And on this author spotlight, I am joined by author Avery Keelan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Avery Keelan is an Amazon top 20 best-selling author of sports romance and contemporary romance, a lifelong hockey fan, and a die-hard coffee lover. She writes swoon-worthy happily ever afters with hot hockey heroes, snarky banter, and enough steam to fog up a mirror. Plus, of course, a hefty dose of drama and angst along the way. With undergraduate degrees in commerce and psychology, Avery specialized in government policy and legislation in a previous life. She lives in Canada with her husband, two boys, and two spoiled rescue cats. Well, welcome. And before we talk offside, let's get to know you a bit. So, what initially drew you to romance as a writer?
I think I was always a really big reader as a child. And then in my 20s, I still read a bit, but I sort of was reading more like the book club type literature and like
Right.
lit fic and that kind of thing. And I enjoyed it, but it never like quite clicked. And
Hmm.
then when my youngest was just a baby, I downloaded Kindle Unlimited and just sort of like felt that was like a
The deep
2014 era,
dive.
like the early
Uh-huh.
days, and just fell right down that rabbit hole. And I was like, oh, this is what I should have been reading all along. Like I was just
Hmm.
in love with it. Um, so yeah, it just kind of came about naturally. It just clicked. I was like, this is where I belong, both like as a reader and then later when I started writing again, that was what I just naturally gravitated to.
So you said writing again. Have you always been a writer, or is that just something that you decided to switch over to?
Um, yeah, like I wrote a lot as a child, lots. My mom brought over the other day, like a box with all my old books that she still
Uh-huh.
has. So I wrote lots in like elementary school, and then like as you get older, you just end up writing essays, and you don't really write any
Yeah.
fiction for
Nothing
school.
fun. Yeah.
And I guess I just never considered it a viable thing for me. Like it seemed sort of like this daunting,
Okay.
mysterious, like especially before indie really became an open pathway
Hmm.
for everybody. So it was just one of those things that you kind of shelved, like, oh, it'd be nice if, but
Like
just
pipe
sort of not
dreams type
practical, right?
things.
And then I just
Yeah.
started writing fun in 2017, 2018 era when my kids were still really little on
Hmm.
Wattpad. And then it just sort of naturally evolved into more of a paying career from there.
So what made you push publish like on like the full manuscript that first time?
Well, Wattpad approached me about being in the paid program pretty early
Okay.
days. So that was very validating. It kind of gave me that confidence that people were willing to pay for my work.
Hmm.
I had two viral books on there. So I was like, okay, like maybe people like what I'm writing. So I did stay in the paid program for a little while, and then I decided to branch out on my own. I think I just realized there was like a broader audience out there that you could reach off of Wattpad. So there's just a higher ceiling.
Right. So how, when you approach your writing, do you find how do you balance, sorry, lost my train of thought there. How do you balance like the story of what's going on with the romance between the hero and the heroine and your main characters?
I think my romances are pretty romance forward, if that makes sense. Like I like
Hmm.
my main characters to be on the page together quite a bit.
Right.
Like I do like some found family and that kind of thing in there, but for me, it's very much about like them and how their arcs sort of intersect. So usually I try to make sure that their wounds and their journeys just sort of complement each other in a way that they can be together as much as possible. I usually force a
Hmm.
lot of proximity.
So when you're writing, like you do the hockey, you do contemporary, is there a subgenre that you would like to dive into that you haven't yet?
um, I've kind of debated, like considering other sports, if I wrap up some of my hockey series or small town, I think would probably be the
Hmm.
next like closest genre that I would consider writing.
Yeah. Can you share any writing rituals or habits that you have that help you stay focused?
It's chaotic, I'm not gonna lie. I do write on my phone a lot just because something about that is almost easier for me to focus. Like sometimes when you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
down on the computer to write, there's like this pressure or like intimidation factor. And sometimes it's
Right.
actually easier for me to just pull up Scrivener on my phone and let my brain just kind of wander and draft. Like just for early drafts, you can't edit obviously on your phone very well, but just when you're sort of free writing, sometimes it's easier on a small screen.
Yeah, it was either Hazelwood or Abby Jimenez who just like they talked about how they've written like entire manuscripts on their phones and people are like,
Yeah.
that's insane. I'm like, I talked to many authors like who get like wild ideas like out in public and they jot like entire scenes down, like because you who doesn't have a phone on them anymore? Like it's just the way that things are. So lots of
Mhm.
authors are doing writing on their phones.
Yeah, especially if you're busy with kids, I think too. Like I've written scenes at like jujitsu. They were smaller. Just do what you have to
Hmm.
do, right?
Yeah, I travel to my kids' practices with my laptop so I can do like work and things like that while I'm there. And luckily, like the school has decent Wi-Fi, so I can just tap into what I need to. How do you handle romantic tropes and cliches, but also keeping your stories fresh and engaging?
Well, I love a good trope.
Do you have a
Definitely my
favorite
kid.
trope?
Gosh, anything fake dating, fake marriage, faking it is, I don't know, I just love it. I think it's so fun
Oh,
to throw them into those like awkward positions in
mm-hmm.
public and then behind the scenes they're sort of starting to crack.
Yeah.
Um, I try not to worry too much about cliches or anything like that because I listened to that talk by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, that writing to your id, and it is
Mm-hmm.
excellent. I don't know, it's hard to get now. I got it before, I think Art Lee took it down. But she kind of just talks about how you should really write to those things that, spark joy, right, for
Right.
you as an author. And I think as long as you put your own twist on it, it still will feel fresh, if that makes sense. I think if you're writing from the
Mm-hmm.
heart and writing like a genuine story that is true to whatever your vision is, two people can take brother's best friend hockey romance and it's going to end up completely different.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing. Like there's so many different ways authors approach a trope or a
Mm-hmm.
story. Like you could give two authors the exact same like breakdown, like this trope, this situation, and you would get two very different stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're really into the character's head, I think. Like
Hmm.
I try to be very much in their like mindset. Like, what would they think like? What would they,
Hmm.
talk like, whatever. Like in
Are you,
Offside, my hero is very specific, right? Like he's very loud in my brain. So he's easy to write because he's not like anybody else.
hmm are you one of those authors who hear like the characters speak to you, or are you one of those authors just the words just kind of flow like as like you're writing them?
I think they speak to me when they're cooperating. Sometimes it's harder, I find, like if the heroes are more reserved, like
Hmm.
for my second book, Shadow, he was harder to get into his head because he was just
Right.
a bit more like closed off.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they kind of just speak to me and come to me with like they kind of it's more like discovering them, if that
Right.
makes sense. Like it's
Like
very
you're learning them as we learn them.
yeah, like it feels like it's like that Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic sort of talks about how the ideas come to you when they're ready. Like
Hmm.
that's kind of how it is for me.
So when you're writing your story, are you a pantser? Or are you a planner? Or are you a mix of both? Because there's authors like they run the gamut. I will say that.
I'm definitely not like an organized plotter. Um, I'm sort of like a plantser, I guess. Like it comes to
Hmm.
me and I'll know some things, and then I sort of start like a messy draft where
Right.
things will be kind of out of order. So I'll know, sometimes I'll know like for sure they kiss right here. This is how it happens down the road. So I end
Hmm.
up with sort of like this Franken draft that I have to fill in, which can be kind of stressful because you're trying to sort out the timeline. So usually like I have my editor or like, some
Hmm.
really trusted alphas that kind of help me sift through sometimes. But it's sort of like a weird hybrid. Like it
Hmm.
comes how it comes. It's not always linear. So,
So you have a tendency to write out of order.
mhm.
It's funny because I read out of order sometimes. Like if I'm not feeling a book, I will skip around, and so like I'll go back and forth, and people find it very wild. And but there's just sometimes like I'm just not connecting with the character, but there's something about them that I like. I'm like, oh well, let me see if in like 17 chapters, like later in
Hmm.
the book I like them better or something's going on, and then I'll skip back because like they'll reference something that happened. I'm like, oh, I need to know why that happened the way it did. So I will completely read, like I'll read an entire book, but I will read it completely out of order.
Oh, that is interesting. That's the first time I've heard a reader say that. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's I don't know. I did it for one, and then I was like, oh, this kind of worked, and
I could
I
see that though, because sometimes it's something slow, I might skim a bit, like as a reader. So I could see
hmm.
it.
Do you have, what are your thoughts on miscommunication in romance? I'm a huge fan of miscommunication. I think that it's not always necessary, but it is a well-used tool. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it just gets a bad rap, if that makes sense. Like, I think
Yes,
what
it does.
people have an issue with is badly executed miscommunication, where there's
Uh-huh.
no like compelling reason. Like, when it is as simple as, like, why don't they just sit down and talk to each other?
Hmm.
That's frustrating, I think, as a reader. I think there should be like a clear obstacle or like a wound or something that you can understand why the miscommunication is occurring. But I think
Yeah,
it's more frustrating when people can't empathize with what's going on in the situation, like
right.
something is lacking to like justify the miscommunication. Because I think like anybody who's married or been in a long-term relationship knows that
Oh,
that's
miscommunication
a
is a
part of life,
huge,
right? Like how
yeah.
many tips will you get with your husband or partner because someone's tone or you know what I mean? And it
Hmm.
escalates, it spirals, right? And those are established relationships. So like in a
Yeah.
newer relationship and romance, I think it makes perfect sense that people would miscommunicate. I think it's just sometimes the way it's executed, right? It's like pregnancy. Like I think
Yeah.
sometimes things I think are just thrown in like a crutch or like they're not well supported. And I think that's possibly where some of the issue comes from.
Yeah, like they added in, but it's not really like fleshed out correctly.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, we need some tension here or whatever. Let's just have them not talk about that. Or I don't know.
So let's talk Offside. It has been out for a little bit, but recently it got picked up for paperback distribution. And so the paperback re-release is July 8th, 2025. It originally released December 2nd, 2024. And the tropes are hockey, enemies to lovers-ish, reform playboy, and it is new adult. I say ish because so Bailey doesn't like Chase, but it's like this college hockey rivalry. So it's like you just don't like them for like not liking them's sake. Like there's really no rhyme nor reason to the not liking. I mean, he is kind of a jerk on the ice, but hey, he's one of those types of players. But it's like there's that enemies to lovers vibe to it, but not true. Because once she gets to know
Mhm.
him, it definitely is not enemies to lovers.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's more like a misunderstanding of who. Well, like that's his outside persona, right? So
Right.
that's what she is kind of judging him on. And if he injured her brother the season before,
Uh-huh.
took him out of the finals, and then he and her ex or her boyfriend that she was with obviously had that
Yeah, so
animosity between
there's
them too.
yes,
So
animosity. There's some tension there because I mean he like but he definitely has this on ice persona and he's kind of a has some golden retriever energy off the ice though. Like he's kind of a good boy.
yeah, it's kind of like a hidden golden retriever, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, he definitely has his moments where like he is makes poor decisions and he lives up to the hype of like the hockey god, so to speak. But yeah, he definitely like has those golden retriever vibes. But so the book opens up with Bailey on her birthday. She's at this really fancy French restaurant with her boyfriend, and she thinks she's going to get proposed to. And that is not what happens at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. And so it kind of begins this like downward spiral of chaos for her emotionally. Why did you open the book that way? Just out of curiosity. Like you opened with a
Um,
bang.
I think the opening came to me slightly later. Like when I started Offside, Chase came to me first. He was very loud because that's
Okay.
just how he is, strong personality, and was like,
Uh-huh.
write this book, right? Like it was kind of just, I was like, oh, this is interesting. What if there's a bit of a rivalry here? And then I knew chapter 9. I don't know if like I don't want to spoil too much. But there's a scene where he sort of rescues her in front
Mm-hmm.
of everybody and in front of her ex. Like that's kind of all I knew. I was like, he definitely, helps save face and pisses off her ex-boyfriend.
Uh-huh.
And this scene is like just came to me first. And then I sort of worked backwards, I guess, in my mind. And I was like,
Okay.
okay, well, what would have happened? Luke is a terrible person. So
Yes, he's
what is
the
the most
worst.
terrible, like, thoughtless way that somebody could break up with somebody? Because that is something that Luke would do. So, and
Uh-huh.
it was like a little bit self-inspired because once upon a time I had a very not so nice boyfriend who broke up with me on one of my birthdays back when I was
Oh,
much,
that's
much younger, like
horrible.
in my 20s, probably I was 20 or 21. So I
Uh-huh.
was like, just a little bit of lived
So you're
experience in
working some
there.
of your frustration into her character because you're like, I know how this
Yeah.
feels. So Luke, yes, is the worst. And as his character arc continues, he continues that downward spiral, like as the book plays out. But Chase, when you first meet him, you're not really sure if you're gonna like him. But as he progresses, he turns out to be this really good guy. Like he is protective to his own detriment at one point, but he's protective. He's very loyal to his friends. He loves fiercely, and it's just he's such a character that you want to get to know him as the book plays out.
Yeah, I think when I started writing it, I wasn't sure if people would like Chase. And I don't
Mm,
know, I was just kind of nervous. Like he's just a stronger personality, I think, versus
yeah,
some of the things I'd written before, especially just offline and like as a newer writer.
right.
So yeah, it was interesting because I wrote it purely for fun. Like I was in lockdown, my kids were playing Mario Kart on the couch type of thing. And I was like,
Right.
I'm just gonna write this for, my own amusement. Like I'm
Uh-huh.
not sure if anyone's even gonna like this guy, but this makes me happy. So I'm just gonna lean into it and write this character as Chase as he can be.
Well, and I think having Luke's downward spiral and Chase continually showing up and doing the right thing, there's just such an opposite to those two characters where she starts out with this guy who she wants him to be everything to her, and he just continues to disappoint everyone around him. And then we have Chase, who he essentially was the disappointment at the beginning from all of these people at Collingwood, but then he continues to raise the bar each and every time he showed up for her. And I think that is a big part of it, is you had such a juxtaposition of these two characters, one our hero, one that I mean, he's a huge part of the story, but I think that's one of the reasons we really enjoyed Chase so much, is because he continued to do the right thing. Well, not always the right thing, but most of the time did the right thing. And then Luke is the villain. Like he is the villain in all ways.
Yeah, and I think there's something kind of fun about Chase being different for her or like different than his public persona. Like I really
Yeah.
like kind of hates everyone but her, soft for her. Like to
Uh-huh.
me it's more special sometimes I think if the FMC gets that side of him that
Hmm.
like nobody else gets and kind of he opens up to her in a way that is different from his public persona. His
Right.
public persona is a bit of a mask or like a protective mechanism and it
Hmm.
serves his career to lean into that and play that part on the ice. So
Well, and I think we get that from Bailey too. Like Bailey she's a strong personality. She's not really afraid of a lot, but she recognizes that she has allowed Luke to squander a lot of her wants and needs and things like that. And she talks about how her and her brother they're decently close. There are some issues, but I mean, they're siblings. Who doesn't have that? But it's one of those things where she had to go without because he went with. She lost out on things. And so it's she's kind of the breakup was one of the best things that could have happened to her in a way, because she recognizes she's not really sure who she is in a lot of ways. She's very confident in some aspects, but very self-conscious in others. And he really
mhm.
brings out the best in her.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that it's kind of relatable to sort of find yourself when you're younger, especially like in a
Hmm.
relationship where things have sort of veered off the path and she's
Right.
surrounded by these people who aren't really very good friends. They're not really her friends. That's
Hmm.
a very painful, I think, relatable experience to sort of
Well, and
find
I
yourself
mean,
there.
they're in college, and so it's very true to how a lot of people's college journeys are. They go into it thinking that they have these really close friends, and something happens, and they're not as good of friends. There's a lot of secrets, a lot of animosity. they clung to her because of who she associated with, and she recognized like who's really there for her and who like she needs to have on her side.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so we have Siobhan and Dallas, who are two side characters. They are on Chase's side, they're Team Chase, but there was never that animosity the other direction with her. Like, I mean, they had some like not misconception, but like they went into it with open minds, unsure, but they were two like really standout characters as well. And Siobhan is one of those characters where she's went through some heavy like but she and so she recognizes like the heavy is there and but she and Bailey like they really click in a way that I wasn't anticipating like as they were introduced.
Yeah, I think it's nice to see Bailey kind of expand out and like make, new friends who are like genuine and like here for
Hmm.
her,
Yeah.
as opposed to people who are just kind of clout chasing.
Hmm.
um, yeah, and I think Dallas is just a more, he's like the dad of the group, a little bit more like level-headed. So he wouldn't have
Uh-huh.
had, I guess, like that animosity or any like, misconceptions the way that Chase or someone might have had. Well, I mean, Chase never, I don't know if I've ever written or would write true enemies to lovers because I feel
Hmm.
like most of my heroes are kind of gone from the beginning. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I think I have her, hate or dislike him, but yeah, most of my heroes are usually kind of simps from early days. So Chase sort of follows that pattern for me
I mean, he
as
really
well.
does, like, because he sees her and is like instantly attracted. He doesn't realize who she is, but once he finds out, he's like, man, I don't really care about that because I'm just gonna kind of go after this. But he recognizes early on like how different their connection is and how different their relationship progresses, especially like when he talks to Dallas and some of the other guys on the team with him, like when they are like, oh, so she spent the night, like, how was it? And all those things. And he's like, we slept. And like
Hmm.
they're shocked that something that simple was that impactful for him.
Yeah. Well, I think him and Bailey both have like that common thread of like people liking them for what they are, or like, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, so he kind of saw, well, she doesn't like me because I'm a hockey player. She doesn't really like
Right.
me at all. So
Yeah.
maybe I can win her over.
Well, he does like little things like he makes her tutor him because I mean she's a journalist and can help him with his papers and he does all these little things to like attach himself to her like a barnacle.
Yeah.
And but she's okay with it because like she wants that attachment. She wants that care. She wants somebody to like really like her and want to spend time with her because of her and not like Derek, her brother. And the fact that he doesn't like Derek actually helps like in his favor for that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think he's like respectfully persistent.
Hmm.
Like there's a fine line there for me for romance because you don't want him to be overriding her, as
Right.
per her wishes or like not respecting her boundaries. But it's like he's sort of just putting himself out there
Hmm.
repeatedly, like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like he does want her to pick him. Well, and Derek, like when we first meet him, like there's kind of that separation. He's making some not so great choices, but his character arc too, like by the end of the book, like they have a much stronger relationship than they did at the beginning. And that's the thing with this story is there's not a ton of characters, but there's enough characters that have like their own personal arc, which you don't always get in a romance. And I think that that was a really interesting choice that like you wanted there to be growth like throughout these characters that we see. Did you do it so you don't have to write books for them? I'm just
um
kidding. Like, I'm
no,
kidding.
I do wish that there could be a Dallas and Shiv book without going back in time. Like
Uh-huh.
that would be, I think, really,
A
really
novella,
nice. I would,
perhaps.
yeah, I have thought about just doing like a novella,
Hmm.
reader magnet, something.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be hard to go backwards like mentally and like delete Bailey, from my head and show
Right.
Chase Bailey would be a difficult thing to do.
Right.
Um, but as a reader too, I you tend to gravitate towards like slightly smaller tasks. It doesn't need to be
Hmm.
super, super tight, but I think that's just a preference. if there's like 30 people, sometimes I have a hard time a bit
It
keeping
it can
track.
be daunting when there's that many
Yeah.
people on page, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's like an ADHD thing or just preference, but yeah, just sometimes I would rather have a little bit more deeper characterization of fewer people,
Hmm.
and really get to know them than try to keep track of too many threads. I think Offside does have plenty of threads, lots of threads as it is plot wise.
Well, there's
So I
there's
think
a lot
adding,
going on in this book. Like there's a lot of
yeah,
little like nuances and little stories. I mean, everything wraps up and we get closure on everything, but there's a lot going on.
yeah. So I think that adding any more cast would have probably just been
Been a
too
little too
much.
much. So what's next for you?
After Offside, it was a shutout.
Hmm.
So that's book two in that series. And that is Chase's teammate Tyler, who's the Ruby goalie, and Chase's younger sister. So
Oh.
she's quite a bit like Chase. So she's very different than Bailey, for example.
Hmm.
Like Serafina is very outgoing, bit of a wild child, pretty girl. And
Hmm.
this is spoilers, this is just the premise, but her and Tyler are at a Halloween party prior to the book where it's like a masquerade ball,
Okay.
have a bit of an anonymous hookup in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then a few months later there's some family things that are going on with Sarah and Chase's family, and Sarah transfers schools because she's down in Arizona and she ends up living with them. So there's a bit of
Ah.
a revelation, very early days in the book there
I
where,
do I do enjoy a roommate story.
yeah, and they realize, Chase is like,
Oh,
oh,
so
Tyler,
they
help
didn't
us.
know.
No, it's like,
Ah.
help us move the bags in. And she's got kind of like this very distinctive rose gold hair. And he's
Uh-huh.
got these very distinctive tattoos on his hands. And so they see each other and they instantly are like, well, this is not good. This is a
Oh,
problem.
that's interesting. And then
Yeah.
are you writing something currently or are you, because that's the paperback re-release, correct?
Well, they're both full traditional deals with
Okay.
Bramble. So Bramble does have the ebook rights as well,
Oh, okay. But
to
are you
everything.
currently writing also?
Well, after that will be Overtime, which is
Okay.
the third and final book in that series. So that is one of the other guys on the team.
Have we met him
Who
yet?
No, he appears under mysterious circumstances in book two. Like he transfers suddenly and without explanation in book two.
Ah, so there's a little mystery there.
Yeah. So it is touched on why, but it's still kind of not widely known, if that
Uh-huh.
makes sense.
It's an
Um,
open secret.
yeah, a little bit. And that is slated for 2026. And then after
Okay.
that will be the next generation series,
Ooh.
which will include Siobhan and Dallas's daughter. And
Okay.
Dallas is in that series as Coach Ward so he's continuing his dad role, his level-headed dad mediator role there for the young ones.
Yeah. I love a second gen series. There's just something about when you fall in love with those original characters that you can't wait to get more of them and to see them like in their element as a parent. It just adds so much to the characters themselves. And like if you go back and read the book and you see little nuances that you can see like as like in their like parenting stage, I just love it so much.
Yeah, yeah, it's super fun. And it's fun to see how their children are or aren't like them. Like I think
Uh-huh.
it's so interesting to see like there will be certain quirks, right, that get passed down,
Oh
but then
yeah.
in other ways they'll be completely different. Or like, they're like whose traits they got. Like if Chase
Uh-huh.
and Bailey with their kids, like there's the three kids and they're all kind of a different mix. So
Right. Well, that there's a lot of exciting things coming then.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Avery, for stopping by the podcast and chatting. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And until next time, happy reading, everybody.
Find us on Instagram at Buzzing About Romance or on Twitter at Buzzing Romance. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like to support us directly, join the Bookcase and Coffee Patreon and receive exclusive content only available to Patreon members. Check out bookcaseandcoffee.com for our on-the-shelf show notes.